Hot Water History, episode 161, Saturday night, late. Richard, what's going on?
What was the method by which Ashley St. Clair and Elon
Gosh,
Musk conceived of Elon Musk's latest love child or offspring in this case?
is this a joke?
Just just go along with it.
Okay. How? I don't know.
They did it Doji style. I thought of that. I thought of that immediately when it happened. And I've been waiting to tell the joke
That's
all this
that.
time.
Yeah.
It didn't land, huh?
No.
Doji style? No?
No.
All right.
I get it, but at first I was thinking, which comment did you see that under? And then right away I was just, oh, he made that one up.
Yeah, it did. It's all me. That's pure me.
Yeah. Um,
I've been following Milo's been amazing, Milo Yiannopoulos on this. He's really going after her.
it's the first time we've seen him in a while.
Well, yeah,
At least I have. I haven't
I've
heard.
been following him for a long time since his. It's interesting how there were these what he characterized as sort of bimbo grifters into conservatism and the conservative movement that really came to prominence toward the late end of the Trump years, but more so in the Biden years. And with their ascendancy, there was a reciprocal decline in his notoriety. I just the his his no not just notoriety, but how many appearances he was doing, what was going on, even mentions of him in broader, even conservative kind of talk show circles and stuff like that. So, and I'm sure one could argue that the major reason for that was his kind of espousal of Kanye and him really running with the Kanye campaign and stuff of that nature and defending Kanye. But still, I would go so far as to say that it's not by coincidence that that occurred. Or
Okay,
yeah,
got it. So he's finally able to pinch hit a little bit on this one.
yeah. Although to his credit, he called that Ashley St. Clair had Elon Musk's baby months ago.
I saw that.
So this is kind of a redemption tour for him.
Yeah, Elon's a
And
busy guy.
he's calling her Smashly
I saw that or Trashly.
and Trashly, which I have to disagree though. There are some people who are out there saying she's unattractive. I think she's always been beautiful, but is she? I think the rumors about her being more than promiscuous and it you I did have to wonder. All of a sudden, she came on my radar when she appeared all of a sudden on Michael Malice's You're Welcome show, and I had never heard of her before. This had to be 4 or 5 years ago, and she's given a platform in not just she was the conservative guest on an anarcho-capitalist show. So, but even then, I mean, Malice has a big show and a big reach. So why is she all of a sudden representative of conservatism? I don't know. So it seemed kind of artificial. It's not as though she says things that are extraordinarily insightful or erudite or enlightening for that matter.
Elon's a busy guy.
Yeah, yeah, he is. He's got five baby mamas now with 13 kids, I think, is the latest track.
Wow.
Hmm. There you go.
Anyways, I don't want to talk about that. This
Doji
wasn't one
style.
of what wasn't one of our topics, but we do have a lot of interesting topics and a great meanwhile in Oak Park today.
Right. And we have in the first tweet that we're going to analyze that is great because it's not just humorous, but it also touches upon Austrian economics, and we can attribute its the very existence or the possibility that such a string of tweets could come together is all thanks to Elon Musk, and he plays a albeit minor role in this thread. So I thought we'd bring that up.
I got it.
And here we go. So there's if you're not familiar, if you're not someone who follows with uh, on any kind of social media regarding Austrian economics, this is a common meme, right? So rather than showing a picture of Friedrich Hayek, not terribly appealing, albeit he wasn't an ugly dude by any stretch of the imagination, just an ordinary kind of old economist looking Austrian guy. Well, sure enough, there's a this happens where you'll get some Austrian who will say something of Hayek and then put a picture of Selma Hayek in there to grab people's attention, right? So here she is, she's falling out of her top, which is about what, six sizes too small for her. And it says, and it's from Rothmus, our buddy Rothmus, who's promoted our stuff before. If socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists on Hayek, right? So, of course, Elon Musk responds, true. And then this guy, this midwit who's self-ordained, who's become a self-ordained policeman of Twitter and disinformation on Twitter, writes this Kino M guy. Frederick Hayek said that effing Christ, the disinformation on this site is getting to be next level. Of course, that is why Twitter in its current instantiation is amazing. And I have to thank Musk for that. But the whole idea that, and then you could see some of the replies like, oh man, this poor Kino M guy. How about you just I think I responded to him. I just said, just sit back. If you're a healthy person, just realize what you've done and laugh at yourself and continue on with your day. But yeah, we don't need to be lectured as to knowing that Selma Hayek did not.
This is a funny
Who,
one too.
yeah, and then you got Will Smith, a picture of Will Smith, and it, of course, is a quote from Adam Smith, not an Austrian. Smith was not an Austrian. He's a classical liberal economist, but all that being the case, and in point of fact, Smithian free market economic theory is very much has a connection with our last episode on tariffs and the takedown on tariffs, in that the emergence of what we understand as economics in the modern sense today is really from Adam Smith, because Smith was tackling mercantilism. And what is mercantilism but a rather intricate web and theory of protectionist tariffs that are created by a host or metropole country so as to, in keeping with a flawed economic theory and presumption and tenet, namely a principle that a nation has to keep the economic vitality, or more so the production and the profit and consequences of economic activity within its own control or within its own citizens' activity. And should it leak out, for example, through what ultimately is pure free trade and pure capitalism that allows for global exchange, well, then that is deleterious or depletes national wealth and even per capita wealth. So this is what modern economists who are of Smith's school, and of course, so many others like Richard Cantillon at the time, improved upon it. And it's Mises and Menger before him, and Baum-Bauer just after him, and between Mises and Menger, who really elevate free market theory beyond the Smithian synthesis and into the Austrian school that is just by all accounts, and if you're going to be truly objective about it, the economic school that has conquered or who has won the day. It really has won the day. It's not Keynesianism fell and burned down like on fire Hindenburg um, when the 1970s hit and you had stagflation. And so Keynesianism is just absolutely eviscerated by that. And even prominent Keynesians like Paul Samuelson or Paul Krugman or Larry Summers or any of these names today, even like Thomas Piketty, will admit that they have no explanation for why in their models as they projected in the 1970s, you could have a phenomenon like stagflation where inflation is high and also, despite economic stimulus and monetary inflation and price inflation taking place, you had a high unemployment rate. So how could that possibly transpire? And they simply have no answer to that. It's very much akin to when you ask an evolutionist where the missing link is or where Darwin actually says, I don't have an answer for this, and they just simply brush past it. It's the same dynamic. Um, but so I just find that to be a fun way of communicating, putting pictures of whether it's Will Smith. I actually enjoy the ones of Selma Hayek a little bit more, but for obvious reasons. But uh, yeah, it's a fun way, tongue-in-cheek way to convey real principles and tenets and elements of Austrian economics.
It's
So
meme warfare.
meme warfare, and it's nice to know that the left can't meme, Keynesians can't meme, midwits can't meme, and everyone else who's operative within these spheres, whether they're on the right, the alt-right, the libertarian arena, or more so just especially ANCAPs. I mean, to my mind, as much as we brought up Milo before, the greatest troller and person on Twitter to follow, if you really want to get a sense of what people that are outside of this political spectrum, this artificial spectrum, how they think, and it's the aforementioned Michael Malice. If you want to, and then because not only does he troll, he also educates at the same time, and he does so with just very pithy, concise, biting but direct commentary. So he's worth a follow.
I think we should have another episode on the missing link,
Okay.
or we could expand on that a lot more, I
Sure.
think.
Yeah, and we were talking in the previous weeks about doing an evolution episode. I would like to have a guest on to do that too.
Yeah. So if anyone knows anyone,
Right. Recommendations.
let us
Throw
know.
them in. Throw them in the hopper.
Let's talk about housing
Sure.
because it's getting a little fishy out there.
Yeah, so Amy Nixon, who, from what I can ascertain, is a real estate agent out in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, posted this on X. Possibly the most shocking housing stat I've seen recently. She writes, the median age of a renter in the United States was 42 years old as of 2024. Now just take that stat for what it's worth right here. Just analyze that in isolation. That's shocking. Renters, the average age of a renter in the United States is 42 years old. I would think that that is Japan. If you were just to give that with the country redacted, I would say something, maybe a socialist country, Scandinavian, Denmark, maybe. But the United States, the average age of a renter is 42 years old. And get that, or get this, it's up from 33 years old. So this is not something this is not something old or that is seen before, but rather novel and new. It's up from 33 years old just 3 years prior. So just 3 years ago in 2021, the average renter in the United States was 33. And now the average renter, or just last year, is 42. She goes on to say a couple things of what she might attribute that to. And she goes on to say that, for example, her first possible explanation is that the under 30 or younger demographic of people entering into or operative within the housing market, that they're living at home more and more. So that would drive the age up over the past 3 years. If you have more and more people living at home because of maybe a lack of job or sufficient job opportunities, that would drive up the overall renter age if the otherwise young people are leaving the market. And then secondly, here's her other thesis, is that older people, which she characterizes as 30 plus in the housing market, who want to buy homes are either priced out of the housing market because of the expansion and boom in housing prices, or hate the market and are renting. And that's possibility as well without having either testimonial or other statistical information or evidence to back that. Now, I have an attendant theory to that, and that is older people, and I know this is a fact for several individuals who I know, so it's anecdotal and obviously very subjective, but older people who I would characterize as shrewd, sort of top of the market, housing market speculators, they sold or are selling. They sold over the course of the last several years their houses that they were previously occupying at what they perceive is or anticipate as being the top of the market. And they're renting for a time until the forecasted or they forecast or predict a housing decline or even a housing a downfall in housing prices, a precipitous decline. So if there's a crash, they would be able to quickly, with the liquidity that they have stored up from having sold their property at the top, they would be able to react quickly and uh, buy at the dip of the housing market.
So that's the guess is that
Those are the best three.
just people you know that seem to be on top of the ball. They is that the
I'm not saying that that third group is a major demographic and contributor to that. I think it's more so one and two. I think she's right. I would offer that she is right that it's the under 30s who are unable to afford because with all of the housing costs,
uh-huh.
of course, that is passed down to the renters. And if the renters aren't receiving pay increases that compensate for the rise in rent fees, well, then of course they're going to stay at home.
I'm really curious about in-campus versus off-campus housing. I'm shocked it would be 9 years, a 9-year difference in 3 years. Do you think there's anything there with how they count? I guess I don't know how they count this stat, but is there a potential that some college kids are getting together and buying instead? Like if a
Oh.
group of friends would never buy a home, right?
Mhm.
For college.
Now I've heard of frats buying or people who, for example, graduate from college and they were previously associated with a sorority or a frat and then they buy a home, but they buy a home and it wouldn't be the entire frat, obviously. It'd be maybe three or four individuals. But I could you imagine being a bank at the moment? You're already you're not overextended because you're supposedly, according to Jerome Powell, have plenty of reserves. But at these interest rates, I mean, maybe the bank would be moved to go ahead and start taking some more risk, taking more risk on. But I think that's if the decline comes, then wow, they're on the hook for a lot of money on that. And then you have the phenomenon of people walking away from those loans. So,
Yeah. It's not going up in DC though, the
oh,
housing market.
no, it's not. Let's take a look at that. Now, even before we take a look at the Kobayashi letters report here, which is really fascinating about what's transpiring in the DC metro area vis-a-vis housing. Owen Benjamin had a great message and post in which he said, if you just chart the Google searches for criminal defense attorneys since the inauguration, well, actually the election of last year and then flowing into the inauguration,
Yeah.
then it's up 4x. So it's up by a multiple of four. Now, why would that be? Well, it seems as though these investigations, whether they're led by DOGE or other entities to root out waste, fraud, and corruption, everybody's hearing it now, that threefold, that triptych of deceit that everyone's hearing on a repeated basis now. Well, there's the chart right there. If you just take the DC metro area over the past 12 months, and yet again, the searches have gone up by more than fourfold. So are are the criminals bugging out? Are the rats jumping the federal capital ship? It seems so. And when you add to that 77,000 individuals who are federal employees, and it would have been a larger number had a judge not placed a stay on it, have taken Trump's offer to have a buyout, well, then all of a sudden, whether these are high earners who have a two-bedroom, three-bath $1 million condo in Georgetown or in related neighborhoods in the city or in the near metropolitan area, or it's just your average federal employee who might have a $500,000 home in Hagerstown or Alexandria or something like that. Well, they're jumping ship too. They're leaving. And when they don't have a job that's tying them to DC, and by and large, they're probably not from there unless they're generational criminals. uh, then there's nothing really tying them to the area.
Which leads to this.
Yeah, go
Since
ahead if you
Doge
want to go.
began discussing mass layoffs, the median home price in Washington, D.C. has fallen by $139,000. In 30 days, nearly 4,000 homes have been listed for sale in and around Washington, D.C. What is happening? Let us explain. And then,
Yeah, and you could just summarize. I mean, take a couple of the thread there. It's
sure.
fascinating how
So
he breaks it down.
699,000 was the median home price in DC in
Mhm.
November
Which
2024. And
we
then
remember we have to understand that the DC metro area and the surrounding counties are the wealthiest counties in the country. They are the wealthiest countries in the counties in the country. They are also the most quote unquote recession proof because their jobs are reliant upon government malfeasance and parasitical usurpation of, well, the rest of the country that is productive. And that those funds come hell or high water, often just because hell predominates.
And then today, 560,000, marking a minus 20% drop in 3 months. It's funny to see just exactly when election day happens is the top of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly
This
8,000
is
homes for sale in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Half of these homes have been listed for sale over the last 30 days.
so now you're seeing just a glut, an absolute glut of homes going on the market in a very short period of time.
Year over year, home listings in the Washington, D.C. metro area are up 23%. Parts of Virginia are seeing 60 to 70% plus jumps in year over year listings. Keep in mind, this is during the winter months in a housing market that has been historically low on supply.
Yes. Hmm. And there he mentions the employee buyout that I had referred to earlier.
Listings is accelerated after Doge's federal employee buyout offer was announced. The offer pays employees through September 2025 if they quit, with 5 to 10% of employees expected to agree.
Right. So the numbers, if it's reinstated, there's going to be even more taking the bailout
65,000
buyout.
federal employees have accepted the buyout offer.
Right. I thought the latest number was 77, but I could be mistaken.
Wow. Fox News reported that 3,600 probationary health and human services employees were laid off by Doge. This is expected to save $600 million in taxpayer dollars annually. The 65,000 Doge cuts so far are now saving an estimated $38 billion in annual taxpayer dollars.
And credit the Luke Fairders and the Elon Musks and the big balls of the world who are coming through here and they're saving, by all accounts, about $1 billion a day. That's real money. That's real money. I know it's a drop in the proverbial ocean, but it's real money. And what, of course, it that those savings have their own multiplier effect. You have all these economists always talking about multiplier effects in defense spending, multiplier effect in government spending, whatever it is. But how about this? How about the multiplier effect of government cuts? We don't have those future expenditures that are required on your books, anticipated expenditures that are on the books. You're free from those. So there is what we're seeing here, and I hope it, gosh, I hope it continues. I almost fall on my knees and pray about this every night, is that as they cut, we're going to see a ratchet effect, but the opposite of Robert Higgs's ratchet effect when government grows. Can we see that there's a ratchet effect when government shrinks, right? That'll never go, maybe it will never go back to where it was before.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Obese. Obese.
Yes, morbidly, disgustingly obese.
Do you want to talk about a town that also has an obese government?
Oh, it certainly does. I mean, and there's no plans to put it on Ozempic. Here it is.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
Should go to your gay suburb now.
The People segment. Meanwhile in Oak Park. I don't know which one to start with. I'm super excited about today.
All right.
The Art of Dying Peacefully. Oak Park Death Doula focuses on end of life experience.
All right.
Tiffany Johnson is a death doula. Have you ever heard of? Do you know what?
Nope.
Are you familiar? You've never been to a
I am
death doula?
unfamiliar.
But the Oak Park resident insists that her work as an end of life educator isn't as dire as the title might seem. In fact, it can be both enlightening and beautiful.
Well, she sure, for those of you not watching the video, she's smiling about it.
Perhaps as much as the better known birth doula. Quote, I am focused on the end of life experience, said Johnson, who owns We Too Shall Pass,
Oh, gee.
an LLC focused on advocacy for a dying person and their family.
With just enough DEI mention and virtue signaling on the race thing, right? This too shall pass.
I'm here to walk alongside of you in your journey so you're not alone and your voice is heard. Johnson's childhood prepared her for this work. Her father was slowly dying during her teen years, so she saw firsthand how hopes, needs, and wishes intertwined.
Mm. This
As
is
for her
such
work,
bad writing, but go ahead.
as
Sorry.
for her work, make no mistake. Quote, it can be hard, sure, but there is also a beauty in accepting what is inevitable, she said.
Wait, can I say this? Probably you don't want to have that if you're an end of life doula or someone who's advocating for a person at the end of the life. You probably don't want the mantra "make no mistake" on there, right? Anyway,
I can't wait. We get into the church on this one too.
Oh,
So I'm
oh
I'm
wow.
really excited for you to,
Oh, okay. Forgive me.
yes.
I was
It can be hard. She added, quote, there is fear and anxiety associated with this time. Often people seek my support because they don't want it to happen. That includes everything from a dying person's bodily disposition, how they are remembered, even writing their own obituary. Part of her advocacy is working with hospice teams and funeral directors. She works in a dying person's home, in nursing homes, and assisted living facilities. Johnson had been a massage therapist since the mid 1990s and studied art therapy prior to that, before becoming a death doula in 2017. In her role, she does a lot of pain management, but that's just one facet of her work. An important part is learning about her clients' faith journeys and how that impacts the death experience. Johnson said since the role of a death doula is relatively new, often people don't realize her support exists.
one might say
That
it's been just totally fabricated and made up, but go ahead.
that's why events she does called Death Over Dinners, which is
What
I,
the
I just I just love,
TOD?
are crucial to helping people come to grips with the inevitable. They are potluck affairs and participants from their 80s all the way to their 20s discuss the specific topics related to end of life. For example, making advance directives.
I brought a pot roast. Now, what should I do with my DNR?
There's more. Johnson is a member of the Illinois End of Life Options Coalition, which is advocating for two bills in the Illinois legislature,
Oh.
one in the House and another in the Senate, that would legalize end of life aid in dying, which is legal in 10 states plus the District of Columbia. The coalition comprises ACLU of Illinois,
Shocker.
Final Options Illinois, and Compassion and Choices Action Network, a natural organization that protects, educates, and expands on end of life options. The safeguards in such a scenario are many, she said. For example, a patient must be deemed terminally ill by two independent doctors with a prognosis of 6 months or less. The patient must be mentally capable and able to self-administer the blend of medications that causes the patient to fall asleep with subsequent heart stoppage. Since the
Otherwise
bills
known as killing them.
since the bills were introduced into both chambers earlier this month, said Chloe King, senior campaign organizer for Compassion and Choices Action Network, the hope is to have the bill on Governor Pritzker's death this spring. Not surprisingly, views on end of life aid and dying can be both diverse and polarizing. See sidebar, which we'll get to. But King and Johnson are both about open discussion around the topic.
Open discussion about suicide and assisted suicide.
Quote, we're not trying to convince anybody to do something they don't want to do, King said. Quote, we connect with communities that have questions so they have the facts so they know what they're opposing. Added Johnson, I welcome those conversations personally. If there was a peaceful conversation about it, those objections would dissipate.
Hmm, that's an assumption that doesn't carry any water, but go ahead.
Theological views on medical aid in dying. Medical aid in dying isn't legal in Illinois, but the End of Life Options Act, or Senate Bill 9 and House Bill 1328, aims to change that. Quote, I would love if there would be hearings and it passed in the spring session, said Chloe King, senior campaign organizer, Compassion and Choices Action Network. Not so fast, say leaders of Oak Park area faith communities. Quote, it's kind of a slippery slope,
Kind of.
said the Reverend Carl Morello, pastor of two Catholic parishes, including St. Catherine of Siena, St. Lucy, and St. Giles. Quote, the church's position has been to honor life from birth until natural death. But when people are in a terminal,
Whoa, whoa. You have a Catholic priest saying honor life from birth? Did you not catch that?
yeah,
What?
no, I was going to read the rest of the sentence. But when people are in a terminal situation, we do support them in making the choice for hospice care.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, that's making the choice for hospice care is perfectly legitimate.
Right.
But the fact that this guy says the church's position has been honor life from birth until natural death. Okay, dude, it's conception to natural death. So he's already giving in. Talk about slippery slopes. You're already giving in. You're already giving in to the whole magical, the vagina is the magical birth canal or the magical personhood canal, where if you pass through, or I guess if it's cesarean, you just get out, then all of a sudden rights are conferred upon you. But before then, you can be you could be crushed, you could be chemically incinerated, you can be killed and extracted in that way and through an abortion. Thank you, Carl Morello. Go pound sand and read your catechism. Another priest that doesn't know basic teaching on issues of life.
Reverend David Heim, interim pastor for Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, agrees with Morello that precedent in this case is worth examining theologically.
Whenever they say that, whenever it's worth examining theologically, you can guarantee that they're going to offer no resistance once this bill that authorizes euthanasia and assisted suicide passes. They're not going to say a word.
Quote, if assisted dying begins to change that culture, people who are in a terminal situation, I guess society expects me to take my life. That's the slippery slope, Heim said. Christians continue to hold the idea that suffering isn't pointless.
Well, at least the Lutherans said that the suffering can be held to be redemptive. Unfortunately, the Catholic priest just keeps going with the lazy, slippery slope argument.
Rabbi Adir Glick, Solomon Family Rabbinic Chair at Temple Har Zion in River Forest, said Judaism does not permit taking a life, either one's own or someone else's, but there may be a slight caveat.
No,
Quote,
slight exception, not caveat. I got the wrong word
quote,
there.
my goal is to support families with whatever they are going through with Jewish ethics, but I also understand we live in a different time, he
Hey, what are we
said.
gonna do?
What if he had to counsel a terminally ill person contemplating aid in dying?
Pull the plug, man. That's all.
Quote, I would leave it open-ended, he
Oh, of
said.
course you would.
I would bring the Jewish value or ethic as a matter to consider, but I understand it is a very personal decision and a person must make the decision based on the wide scope of their situation.
Okay, so it's just totally fungible and relative. Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi, thank you for articulating the basic liberal Jewish tradition for the past and rabbinical tradition for the past, what, 1950 years or so?
Reverend Emily Gage of Unity
Can't wait
Temple
to hear this.
adopts a similar view and points to a 1988 Unitarian Universalist congregation statement affirming one's right to die with
Ah,
dignity.
well, you know, you're always going to go to sound theology when you talk about the Unitarians. They're on board.
Quote, I can't speak for everybody in our congregation. You can, but I believe the locus of decision making should be within each person, she said.
Hmm.
For me, it includes making decisions on how you would die, given the parameters of their terminal illness.
Ah, of course. So again, just according to that metric, and it's not even a standard. It's just if you feel like you have to do it, go for it. There's no objective morality. Thank you, Unitarians. It's funny. I don't really understand why the Unitarians don't just pop off and go to the synagogue or vice versa. I mean, they're essentially the same religion.
Any other thoughts on this one? I knew this one would get you a little fired up.
Well, yeah. Other than, I mean, you have these. To call them midwits would be way too complimentary. From a Catholic priest to at least the Lutheran pastor, at least throughout that some suffering can be redemptive, and that there's grace in suffering, and that the human person made in the image of God, that image is not blotted out because you're at the end of your life and you're suffering, just as it's not blotted out before you're born, or it's not apparent before you're born. So the rest of it is all just a bunch of nonsensical, permissive, anything goes nihilistic subjectivism that you just determine whether what's right or wrong. It's just new age bullshit that dominates, and in the background, Satan's having a hell of a laugh as you're trying to offer, smudge out, or just extinguish the image of God in people. It's heinous.
Next one. Intense national moment. Oak Park leaders stand up for DEI progressive values.
Of course they do. There they stand up. Isn't it saying stand up? Isn't that ableist? What about the people that are in wheelchairs that can't stand up? Assholes.
In show of solidarity, range of leaders gather at Unity Temple.
What a shocker.
In a show of solidarity, leaders from numerous Oak Park organizations, governmental, nonprofit, and business related, gathered at 4 p.m. Monday at Unity Temple to emphasize their shared commitment to inclusivity. Quote, our strength lies in our diversity, Village President Vicky Skaman said in a news release. Quote, we will continue to remain unified in our dedication to our values. It is our collective strength that protects these values and ensures we will always remain a safe community for everyone. Oak Park has and will continue to work to be inclusive of all people. According to a Village news release, the work can be imperfect, but the community is, quote, unyielding in its values, officials said.
Which is so ridiculous because was it the previous episode or the episode before that that we looked at the articles regarding ICE detentions and arrests in Oak Park? And as a true caveat, an addendum corollary is a better word for all their pronouncements about standing up to ICE agents, and they always ended with, "But we're going to comply with federal law."
We're
We
gonna
don't want
get
to
we're
in
gonna
trouble.
get to that. We're gonna get to that right here.
Okay, sorry.
Leaders from the Village of Oak Park, District 200, District 90, District 97, Oak Park Public Library, Park District of Oak Park, Housing Forward, Downtown Oak Park Business District, Oak Park River Forest Chamber of Commerce, Community of Congregations, and many more were in attendance. The gathering comes just after Oak Park officials stated they will not assist in enforcement of federal immigration laws in civil cases.
Oh, and see, there's always that
It's
little bit. It's civil cases.
President Donald Trump's administration has arrested more than 8,000 immigrants since his inauguration with promises to deport them. Reverend Emily Gage
Oh, there she is again, our
of,
great theologian.
of Unity Temple kicked off the gathering by emphasizing that this community puts love at the center and celebrates diversity and inclusion. We're all in this together, she said.
No, we're not.
Skaman, surrounded by colleagues, then gave a speech describing Oak Park's commitment to uphold values related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. These values are under attack, she said, as the Trump administration takes power.
Well, they've already taken power, so get your
Here's
tenses
the
right.
here's the
Oh, it's filled to the rafters.
yeah.
Not any trace of testosterone in the building. There you
Trump
go.
issued an executive order January 20th terminating, quote, illegal DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility mandates, policies, programs, preferences, and activities in the federal government under whatever name they appear, according to NPR. But Oak Park will stand in, quote, loving solidarity, Skaman said, with the LGBTQ plus community and the right to love who you love and be who you are. And individuals from all backgrounds deserve to feel respected, to have dignity, and to feel as though they belong here, she said. Skaman said the village will always be a welcoming and safe place for those seeking refuge.
Even criminals.
In the spirit of those values, Oak Park took in migrants in the fall of 2023, many of whom spent several months in village-sponsored shelters. By April 2024, the village had come together to house 201 migrants.
Oh, wow. What a smashing total.
Skaman also said education of young people in Oak Park will reflect its progressive values.
Oh,
While,
well, indoctrination,
while,
not
diff-
education.
while differences can sometimes lead to division, she said that in Oak Park, understanding and acceptance are the priority, and science will continue to be, quote, the guiding light of policymaking here, she said.
The science. What science has come out conclusively in favor of multiculturalism? Just we're not even talking about affirmative action, DEI, preferential programs. I'm just talking about multiculturalism. Where's the science on that? It seems that the science is not, it just might be in contravention and contradiction of that. But go ahead.
The village will also continue to amplify the voices of marginalized communities and challenge barriers, Gaiman said. DEI is foundational to how Oak Park aspires to live, she said. Every person must embrace moral clarity to recognize the difference between doing what one is told versus doing what is right, she said.
Mm.
Oak
Except
Park's
when it comes to COVID.
Oak Park's leaders will mobilize quickly to protect the community, she said.
Oh God, do we have to read her letter?
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. Just let me get a deep breath here. So
Yep. Remarks from President Skaman. I'm gonna do my best, Vicky Skaman.
I want to talk. I want.
I want to talk a little bit about what makes a community. There are so many things that can bring people together. Faith, family, education, work, shared purpose. Sometimes it's as simple as loving the same sports team or sharing the same hobby. Community
What
is
if we
all
didn't do that? What if we didn't do that? Am I no longer part of the community?
communities. I don't get what you're saying.
Well, okay. So she says she wants to talk a little bit. Of course, this could be written by a third grader and actually a kindergartner. There are so many things that could be people together. What if I share none of those things, those aspects? Faith. I don't have a similar faith to most people there. In fact, if you are a devout traditional Catholic, you don't share your faith with the vast majority of Oak Parkers. Family. Maybe I'm single. Education. Maybe I'm a truck driver and I have a GED that I don't share an education. And by the way, how do you share the same education with someone? It- your educational background is individualized unless you have someone that's going, and even if you had someone going with you from preschool all the way through to graduate school and you were in the same grade together, which is highly unlikely to have happened, your education doesn't unify you. It would never have transpired the same way. Your disposition, the outcomes that took place aren't the same. Work. None of this shared purpose. What if I don't maybe my purpose is to be greedy. Okay? So or maybe my purpose is to just be left alone. That'd be anathema in Oak Park. So are you therefore exclusionary? Because it seems like the only thing that you're arguing is the purely unifying factor is that we're not discriminatory.
I think she's gonna talk about I think she's gonna talk about Oak Park as you'll get it, I think.
We'll see.
Community is all the little ways we build bridges between each other, forming the vibrant network of relationships that become the fabric of who we are together. In the case of the community, I have been elected to represent Oak Park. It starts with borders and geography, but shared geography over time. I know. Hold on.
That sounds
But shared geography over time turns into shared history. And the community of Oak Park, that shared history, the triumphs and failures, the building and growth, the striving and seeking is a history, a story of some very deeply held values.
all right. Let's get to those in your exclusionary community of Oak Park.
Today, those values are under attack with great speed and ferocity. Our
Wow.
national leaders are making changes that may transform the very nature of our federal government. And many of those changes are directed specifically at the values we hold dear. We are a community that believes fundamentally that every person deserves to be safe, respected, and cared for. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are not words we use to fearmonger in our community. They're foundational to how we aspire to live. We care for and lift up the most vulnerable among us. We respect science and make collective decisions that reflect scientific consensus and
None of that
progress.
is true. It's all emotionalism. It's anti-scientific. There's nothing objective or evidence-based. They don't go through economic or social, even social scientific analysis to come up with the legislation or statutes that they pass. I mean, when was the last time we talked about something where, other than maybe Ravi Parakat, anyone in their discussions at the village board meetings of this idiotic village brings in social scientific research? or economic findings or anything of that nature or an environmental study. No, never. It's all just perception. Go ahead.
We celebrate other cultures and yearn for cultural exchange. We
Yearn.
we welcome strangers and new arrivals. We recognize the power of education to change lives for the better and to keep us always mindful of the mistakes of the past.
Mm.
We are human and we are often imperfect in our striving to live up to our ideals, but we forge ahead guided by our collective belief that compassion, understanding, and inclusivity are strengths. If we're not careful, fear can cause us to close our hearts to each other. History is full of moments where people were ordered to abandon their values and they obeyed out of fear.
Like COVID?
Yeah. As a community, we must have the moral clarity to recognize when we have to choose between doing what we're told and doing what's right.
Like killing our elderly.
Obviously, this moment is difficult and I don't have all the answers. So many of you are uncertain and scared of the changes that are coming. But I, for one, am unwilling to concede these shared values in our community.
We'll see about that.
I
We'll
don't know.
see.
I don't know what the coming months and years will bring us, but I do know that we must be unyielding in our commitment to who we are and what kind of community we want to be.
Oh God. They say if she says the word community makes me want to vomit as it is, but it's just talk about unyielding. The way in which progressives use the word community is just a totally amorphous construct of what they deem is the preferred values that they like to project upon everyone else and then declare it that everyone believes this. Notice the language is always talk about it's coercively inclusive. Always coercively inclusive.
This means that our historic commitment to fostering racial integration and to cultivating diversity and equity will continue. It means that we will stand in loving solidarity with our LGBTQ plus siblings and
Well,
that the
siblings.
and that the right to love who we love and the right to be who we are will always be defended here. It means we will always be a welcoming village and that those who seek refuge or opportunity here from afar will always be safe with us.
Oh, now I get the siblings things. She can't say brothers and sisters because that's cisgendering them. That's amazing.
It
Go
means
ahead.
that science will continue to be the guiding light of our policymaking.
Again, it's never is and never
And
has
it
been.
means that the education of our young people will always reflect these progressive values and our continued growth as a community. Strength lies in our diversity. Through our combined leadership, we are resolved to uphold compassion and embrace inclusivity. We gather together to demonstrate our commitment to leading as one, and we will continue to remain unified in our dedication to our values. It is our collective strength that protects these
Collective.
values and ensures we will always remain a safe community for everyone.
Hmm.
I
She's living in a dream world.
don't want to talk about this one too much, but definitely worth getting into. OP trustees stress over potential costs of Village Hall remodel, new police station.
Oh my God. They're still talking about this?
Yeah. Oak Park Village trustees once again expressed worries about the potential high costs of building a new police station and remodeling Village Hall as Johnson, Lasky, Kindlin architects work to produce 3 schematic designs for consideration. Quote, we're going to have to make some tough decisions, Village President Vicky Skaven said.
There's more scientific talk, tough decisions.
In December, Public Works Director Rob Sproul said village staff negotiating the agreement with JLK based on an estimate of the project costing $120 million, but some trustees aren't happy with that number. The total project cost is still yet to be determined. Okay, so these architects are they're making it. The village board hired them in December for an amount not to exceed $1.85 million. So that $1.85 million is based off the $120 million
Yes.
that they estimate the project will cost,
Hmm.
but they still don't know which parts of the project they're going to have to pick and choose when it ends up either being over 120 or they just cut out some of the statues and all the extra stuff that they want.
Is Percy Julian statue?
I would be
Shocked if that wasn't on there. Hemingway won't be on there because he was white.
if there's a Julian statue in Village Hall, they're already keeping the house. What do they need another?
No, there will
That
be.
might be its own episode of
There
Hot Water
will be.
history if the Percy Julian statue goes up.
Right.
The this quote, this building clearly no longer conveys in a functional way that sense of open government, said Colette Lewick, Facility Review Committee co-chair. Yeah, they want net zero greenhouse gas emission police stations,
Oh, of course.
produce several conclusions to help achieve the goals of an open, transparent government and police structure. They want the municipal campus to, quote, feel like home and focus on the wellness of all who work there and visit. And the council chambers should be fully accessible, inclusive, and safe, they agreed. Trustee Lucia
Hey,
Robinson.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Oak Park is notorious as being the village that has spent more money per capita on parking zone regulations and signs than any other town, municipality, maybe in the United States, maybe in the world. How inclusive, how welcoming is it? Well, at least when you go to pay, so they're going to create an environment somehow architecturally. Good luck, architects. So when you get a parking ticket for a sign for some ridiculous regulation, parking regulation, that you'll feel welcomed to go off and pay your fine when you arrive at Village Hall. But the rest of the village is not going to look very welcoming.
I think this paragraph, this quote right here is probably the quote of the week. I struggle with the expense of the Village Hall renovation, but one of the most significant problems I have with Village Hall is it is not an inclusive structure. And there are many people in our community who cannot access village government in the way that they deserve to because our structure is hostile to them.
What the fuck are you talking
Trustee
about?
Brian Strauss said.
This guy, man, is he fully inverted or what?
Trustee Lucia Robinson asked village staff to come back to the board with an analysis of the potential property tax implications on residents for the design options. At the $120 million estimate for this project, Robinson said the Oak Park Township assessor told her that it could have quite a significant impact on property tax bills.
This is gonna. I'll tell you what. If they build this thing, it'll be 240.
I don't think so.
Okay. Then
But
they'll sweep it. They'll sweep the additional costs under the rug. Somehow they'll fudge it. They'll fudge the numbers.
Village manager Kevin Jackson clarified that analysis might be difficult to produce as several funding sources, such as grants or other partnerships, could be bankrolling the project too.
Could
So,
be. Well, I don't know.
so estimates will be incomplete, but trustees said they still want to see one to get a general idea. Trustee Ravi Parakat pointed out that the board can't bank on having other funding either. Quote, it's easy to talk about values, and values need to be the basis of our decision. But if inclusivity is a value, then the price point and how it lands on the community is going to be impacting what the
He's basically saying if you're going to make all these things inclusive, then the price point is going to change and it's going to go up, and therefore it's going to impact the community. Again, the community.
got it. Okay. Yeah, I kind of get that sentence now. He also emphasized that the average Oak Parker spends little time in Village Hall, and having to spend a lot of money to renovate it could push people away from the village.
Exactly what they want.
Skaman, however, pointed out that despite trustees' cost concerns, there is still a significant cost to just maintaining the building as is, and costs of construction are only getting more and more expensive each year.
Oh, here's this dumb argument that the construction costs are getting more and more expensive each year. Well, not in real terms. I mean, and all of a sudden, Vicky Skaman knows what the cost of copper is going to be the price of copper is going to be? Wow, if she does, then she's got Pelosi level crystal ball insight on commodities. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And this is what we got to get shovels in the ground because we're missing out. And furthermore, notice the excluded assertion and presumption there is that is the new building not going to require maintenance? It might require a little bit less, but if you have all these add-ons so as to make, according to what was the name, Brian Shaw with a Y or whatever his name was, um, everything more inclusive so people feel welcome in their village hall that the vast majority of Oak Parkers don't even go to, well, then you're going to push up the price anyway. And isn't that going to require more maintenance?
In 2019, the previous board voted no on a police station, she said. So pushing things down the road is not benefiting our residents either. Jonathan Tallman from Dewberry also clarified that part of the cost for a new police station is requirements for it to be storm shelter capable, able to withstand an earthquake, and bullet resistant while still being open and inviting, as all bullet
That's awesome.
resistant places are.
It's great. It's going to be a fallout shelter. It's going to be able to survive an earthquake and be bulletproof, but we got to make sure it's open and welcoming.
Still, overall project cost remains a top concern among trustees. Quote, I don't want to spend 100 million on buildings that in 2040 lots of people won't even go into. Trustee
Hey.
Corey Wesley said, adding that young people are less likely than folks today to engage with village services in person.
Oh.
I can envision a village hall in 20 years as half empty or less while we're still paying for it. That would be, I think, a waste of money.
You think, Corey? Well, at least he had some insight there. That was good for you, Corey Wesley. I mean,
Were you
go
gonna
ahead.
say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say he has a fantastic point, and dare I say that he's being very Doge-like. He's looking at the way in which young people, either by force, most likely by force, or through volition, interact with local government, which is both sparing and, for the most part, digital. I mean, how many people are going in? No one's doing the old thing because it's probably not available to them. If you're a small business, a dwindling, a member of the dwindling community of small businesses that are still operative in Oak Park, going in and negotiating and bringing in donuts for the comptroller to take away this little fine because your sign doesn't isn't up to code. No one's doing that anymore. So if that's the case, you first of all, you don't need a person negotiating that. And secondly, if it's all digital, then again, our argument would be there shouldn't be any kind of relationship there. But it's certainly not a need to interact with local government. But if it's going to be there, then I mean, it's going to be done digitally by these new generations. Right? Why would you waste your time, valuable time, to go into a building, especially as Corey Wesley says, it's going to be half full.
That's a segment.
Boom.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay?
Brought to you by Tridentine Brewing.
Yes, it is.
Get you TB. That's an
What do you
episode
think?
too. I don't have much else to talk about. Just I feel kind of fat. I ate a lot this week. I was in
Okay.
Texas.
Yeah.
I ate a lot in Texas. So I feel a little like gotta work
Bloated.
out, gotta work out a little more this week. Like we're
Gotcha.
fine. We're fine. Right?
It's wild because you said you were feeling bloated and full. I feel as though after that episode, it was so cathartic that I feel as though there's kind of been a release.
Well, that I was
Light.
gonna get to that. I was gonna say, as bloated as I feel, that's when you're in the picture and you're like, oh, my face is looking a little chubby. But you got some dude with like 5 chins next to you in the picture. It's kind of how I felt doing that last segment of Meanwhile in Oak Park, right?
Right.
So,
Yes, but you won't be calling that end of life doula.
no.
You're not. No?
No.
Okay,
No.
good. Don't
It'd be fun
go
to
there.
prank. It'd be fun to prank call.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, Illinois is not a re two-way recall or recording allowance state. So,
Right.
one of these days.
Yeah.
With that, Charlie,
That's all I got. You got anything
yeah,
else?
no, that's it. Go to mass tomorrow, people. And we'll see you next time.
All right. God bless everyone.